የአለኝታ የሬዲዮ ድምጽ ነው። የአለኝታ ሬዲዮ በይሳቅ ድረስ በጎ አድራጎት ድርጅት የሚዘጋጀው የአማርኛ ፕሮግራም ዘወትር ቅዳሜ ከሰዓት በኋላ በኤም 900 አየር ሞገድ ከ9 ሰዓት እስከ 9 ሰዓት ተኩል ድረስ በሎስ አንጀለስና በአካባቢው ለሚኖሩ ኢትዮጵያውያን ህብረተሰብ የሚያስተላልፈውን ዝግጅት እዚህ ላይ ይጀምራል። አድማጮቻችን የዛሬው ፕሮግራማችን የሚያተኩረው በአውሮፓውያን መቁጠሪያ ሜይ ተብሎ የሚጠራው ይህ የያዝነው ወር የአእምሮ የጤንነት ወር ወይንም ሜንታል ሄልዝ ማንስ ተብሎ የተሰየመ ስለሆነ እኛም ይህንን ተገንዝበን ባለፈው ጊዜ ከሎስ አንጀለስ ካውንቲ ዲፓርትመንት ኦፍ ሜንታል ሄልዝ የበላይ ባለስልጣን ጋር ከዶክተር ሳዘር ጋር ያደረግነው ውይይት በእንግሊዝኛና በአማርኛ ቀነባብረን ይዘንላችሁ ቀርበናል። አድማጮቻችን ፕሮግራሙን እንድትከታተሉ እንጋብዛችኋለን። መልካም ቆይታ። Good morning, Dr. Sazer. I wanted to express how grateful we are to have this interview opportunity with you for Alegnta Ethiopian Radio today. With that, I will move to my first question to you. Since you have been heading the Department of Mental Health for many years, can you tell us in general about the department's effort to serve the residents of Los Angeles County, in particular, the underrepresented community with language, culture, and huge stigma problem? በተቀዳሚ ጤና ይስጥልኝ ዶክተር ሳዘር። የኢትዮጵያውያንን ህብረተሰብ ለማነጋገር በይሳቅ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅት የሚዘጋጀው በአለኝታ የሬዲዮ ድምጽ የአማርኛ ፕሮግራም ላይ ስለሚመሩት የሕክምና ድርጅት ገለጻ ለማድረግ ፈቃደኛ ስለሆኑ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። ከዚህም በመቀጠል የምጠይቀው ጥያቄ የሚመሩት ድርጅት የአእምሮ ወይም የጭንቅላት ሕክምና የሚሰጠውን መስሪያ ቤት በእንግሊዝኛ የሎስ አንጀለስ ካውንቲ ዲፓርትመንት ኦፍ ሜንታል ሄልዝ ተብሎ የሚጠራውን ኃላፊ ሆነው ሲሰሩ ብዙ ጊዜ ቆይተዋል። መስሪያ ቤቱ የጠቅላላውን የሎስ አንጀለስን ሕዝብ በጭንቅላት ወይም በአእምሮ ሕክምና በኩል ምን እየሰራ እንደሆነ ቢገልጹልን፣ በተለይም ለሀገሩ አዲስ መጥ ለሆነው ህብረተሰብ በሚመለከተው ህመም ምን አይነት ትኩረቶችንና አገልግሎቶችን እንደምትሰጡ ቢገልጹልን እጠይቃለሁ።
Well, Mr. Darris, first of all, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to address the community and say that in Los Angeles, since we are such a diverse community and have people from so many different places, it's always been one of the core parts of our job, our responsibility, our mission here in Los Angeles County to make sure that we address the special mental health needs as they exist in the immigrant communities from all over the world. And as we've done this, we have found that the stigma, the fear of getting mental health services, the burden, the shame associated with having a mental health problem is not the same in every community. In some communities, the problem is that people feel as though they are defective, that there's something wrong with them if they admit to having a mental health problem. In other communities, the issue is that they feel that they bring shame on their family and their background. In other communities, the problem is that they feel that this ought to be a physical health problem, that the doctor should prescribe something that would fix it, and then they wouldn't feel anxious and depressed. So different communities have different problems, and one of the things that we have learned is that a generic approach just doesn't work. So as we approach the Ethiopian community and try to find out how we reach out, how we look at making sure that people get the mental health services that they deserve and they need, the obstacles in your community may be different than it is in the Latino community, in the Asian Pacific Islander community. So that's one of the first things that we've learned is our first responsibility in serving underserved communities is to listen. What are the issues? What are the obstacles? because we know that your community has mental health problems. And the reason we know that is because you're human beings. And every community that's made up of human beings has mental health issues. It's a part of the process of being human. So as sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, we have mental health issues as a part of our inheritance. One of the things that makes that difficult is that having a mental illness, being sad, being anxious, having thought problems is hard by itself. It's even harder if our family doesn't understand, if our neighbors don't understand, if our churches disapprove, if people think we're just being weak. And this is the truth, that mental illness is an illness just like diabetes or the flu. Mental illness is an illness that if you get the right treatment, you recover. You feel better. Things can go back to normal. But people, because of the shame, don't get the help that they need. And I see that as one of the things that I've learned is the first responsibility is to try to find ways to reduce the stigma, the shame, and let people talk about the problems so they can get the help that they need.
በመጀመሪያ የኢትዮጵያውያን ህብረተሰብ በተመለከተ በድርጅቱ ስለምንሰጣቸው አገልግሎቶች በዚህ የሬዲዮ ድምጽ ላይ እንድናገር እድል ስለሰጣችሁኝ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። እንደምታውቁት የሎስ አንጀለስ ነዋሪ ህዝብ ከተለያየ ሀገር የመጣ ብዙ ህብረተሰብ የያዘ ስለሆነ የኛው ዋናው ስራችን ከፍ ያለ ትኩረት በመስጠት የምንሰራው የነዋሪውን ህዝብ የጭንቅላት ጤንነት መጠበቅ ዋናው አንኳሩ ስራችን ስለሆነ ከተለያየ ሀገር ለሚመጣው ህብረተሰብ እንደ ባህሉና እንደ እምነቱ ከሕክምና ሥራ ጋር የሚቀራረብበትን ዕቅድ በመተለም በህብረተሰቡ ተቀባይነት እንዲያገኝ በማድረግ እየሰራን ነው። በአንዳንድ አዲስ መጭ ህብረተሰብ የጭንቅላትን ህመም በጣም ከባድ የሆነ ታክሞ የማይድን የመጨረሻ ህመም አድርጎ ስለሚያየው ይህም አይነት አስተሳሰብ በህብረተሰቡ ሆነ በቤተሰብ ህመሙን እንደ ነውር አድርጎ ታማሚ ለሆነው ሰው ህመም እንዳለበት እንኳን እንዳይቀበል ትልቅ ግፊት ስለሚያደርስበት ህመሙ ተጠናክሮ ራስን ማጥፋት ደረጃ ድረስ እንዲደርስ ያደርጋል። ለሚያውቀው ህብረተሰብ የጭንቅላት ህመም ከስኳር በሽታ ወይንም ከኢንፍሉዌንዛ ተለይቶ መታየት የለበትም። እንደማንም በሽታ የጭንቅላት ህመም በሰዓቱ ህክምናውና እርዳታ ካገኘ አንድ ሰው ከህመሙ ሊድን ይችላል። ትክክለኛ ያልሆነ የባህልም ሆነ የግለሰብ አስተሳሰብን ሁኔታዎችን በሚገባቸው መንገድ በማስተማር የህብረተሰቡን አስተሳሰብ ከበሽተኛው ላይ የሚያመጣውን ተጽዕኖ ማስወገድ ከባዱ ስራችን ነው። ይህም ህመም በተለያዩ ህብረተሰብ የተለያየ አመለካከት ይሰጡታል። ለምሳሌም ያህል ያንዳንዱ ህብረተሰብ ባህልና እምነት አንድ ሰው ጭንቅላቱን ከታመመ እንደ አካለ ጎዶሎ ሆኖ ይታያል። ቤተሰብም ይህንን አመለካከት ስለሚያውቀው የታመመውን ሰው የሚያሳፍር ሥራ እንደሰራ ድጋፍ እንደመስጠት ፋንታ ራሳቸውን በማሸሽ ወይንም ህመሙ እንዳለበት ባለማመን ወይም ባለመቀበል ህመምተኛው እርዳታ እንዳያገኝ ተጽዕኖ በመሆን መጥፎ ውጤት ያመጣል። የኛ መስሪያ ቤት የአእምሮ በሽታን በተመለከተ ለኗሪው ህዝብ ሁሉ ይህ ህመም እንደማናቸውም በሽታ ከሰው ልጅ ጋር አብሮ ያለ ስለሆነ የተለየ ሆኖ ሳይታይ አስፈላጊውን የሕክምና በጊዜው እንዲያገኝ ህብረተሰብም ይህንን አመለካከት ይዞ በሽተኛውን በመንከባከብና በማቀፍ እንዲያግዘን በተደጋጋሚ በማስተማር ህዝባችንን ለመርዳት ትልቅ ጥረት እያደረግን ነው። የጭንቅላት በሽታ በተለያዩ ምክንያቶች ሊከሰቱ ይችላል። ለምሳሌም ያህል አንዳንድ ጊዜ ሰው ስራ አጥ በመሆን በራሱ ላይ ጭንቀት ሲያበዛ፣ ሁለተኛም የአሜሪካን ኑሮ ባህል ከመጣበት ሀገር ጋር አልጣጣም ሲለው፣ በሶስተኛ በኑሮ አለኝታ ሲያጣ፣ በቤተሰብና በልጆች መካከል በትምህርት ቤት ጉዳይም ሆነ በሌላ አብሮ የመነጋገር ወይንም የመዋየት ልምድ ሳይኖር በሚመጣ ጭንቀት ከላይ የተጠቀሱትን ሁሉ የሚፈጥሩትን የአእምሮ ህውከት የጭንቅላት ህመምን ሊያመጡ ወይንም ሊያባብሱ ይችላሉ። ስለዚህም ለተጠቀሱት ችግሮች ሁሉ መስሪያ ቤታችን ብዙ አይነት መፍትሄዎች ስላዘጋጀ እነኚህን ጭንቀቶች ወደ በሽታ ሳይቀየሩ ቤተሰቡም ሆነ ግለሰብ የሚያስፈልገውን እርዳታ በቅድሚያ ሊጠይቅ ያስፈልገዋል ብለው መልስ ሰጥተዋል።
What are the steps the Department of Mental Health taking on issues such as suicide and suicide prevention that affects every society, especially the underrepresented community?
ሁለተኛው ጥያቄን የራስ ሕይወትን ማጥፋት በተመለከተ ከዚህ ደረጃ የሚያደርሰውን ህመም ለመከላከል ለአዲሱ መጪ የሎስ አንጀለስ ነዋሪ ምን አይነት ዝግጅት ወይም ትምህርቶች ትሰጣላችሁ?
Suicide is a really important, and you might think of it as the worst case scenario that comes out of the unwillingness to deal with mental health problems, because if you're afraid of the shame that's associated with a mental illness, the sadness, the depression, the pressure that you're under, and you won't talk about it, you won't get help, you're shamed by your community for having those issues, it can feel like there's no way out, and therefore that your family, your community would be better off without you. And those are the circumstances in which suicide occurs. So how do we prevent that? So think of it. The first step is to find ways that people feel comfortable about talking about their issues and their problems, the stresses that affect them in their lives. And as you were saying, it's a particular problem in immigrant communities because think of it this way. People come from a place where they're integrated into their culture. They feel supported by their families. They may be poor, but they have support. They come to a place where they have greater opportunities, but they've made great sacrifices to come to a place to have greater opportunities. If they are not succeeding, they think, why have I put my family through this? Why am I in this situation where I'm alone and isolated and a failure? And so all of those stresses, all of those pressures to succeed come upon them, and they don't have the supports from their family in the same way that they had before. Because even if they have a community of friends from Ethiopia here, it's not the same. It's a different culture. The pressures are different. The customs are different. Many things are different, and so trying to negotiate and honor the inheritance that one has received from one's homeland and try to do that in the context of a culture in the United States that's seductive and very different puts huge pressures on individuals and on families. And when somebody is facing problems anyway from a mental illness, and at the same time they feel like their family doesn't support them or like them anymore, or they're losing control of their children, or the children don't feel connected to their parents, all of those things, I mean, you can imagine the pressures are huge. So, first step, finding ways to talk. Second step, finding ways of reconnecting with the supports. So we need to rebuild those kind of networks within a community that create the opportunities for mutual support that existed back home. They won't be identical, but we have to create new ways of supporting each other, because that's why community exists. In fact, I think that's why we exist as human beings, to find ways of supporting one another in going through this life. And if we feel isolated, we cannot succeed as individuals. The first thing was to find a way of to talk about our issues and problems. And the second thing is to find support within our natural communities. Find ways of getting that kind of social support that everybody needs. The third thing is to get professional help. So when your diabetes is out of control, just exercising won't do it. You need medication. If you've got pneumonia, you need an antibiotic. Rest won't do it. It's the same thing with mental illness. When things get to an acute stage, social support, talking, all of those things aren't enough. You need professional help. And the Department of Mental Health of Los Angeles County has crisis services available. Sometimes there are waiting lists for some of our services, but for crises where where suicide is at issue or people feel threatened, we have crisis response available at all times. And if anybody needs help, anybody hearing this thinks that they are in a situation where they're threatened, our 1-800 number is 1-800-854-7771. Again, that's 1-800-854-7771. Call that number, get the help you need.
እንደምታውቁት የራስ ህይወት ማጥፋት ድርጊት ሰው የመጨረሻ ደረጃ ሲደርስ የሚወስደው እርምጃ ነው። የራሱን ህይወት ለማጥፋት ሲወስን ምን አይነት ከባድ ተስፋ የመቁረጥ ውጤት ነው። ይህም ሰው በህብረተሰብም ሆነ በቤተሰብ ተቀባይነት ወይም ድጋፍ ሲያጣ፣ ሌላ አማራጭ መንገድ ሳይታየው፣ አስፈላጊውን ሕክምና በጊዜው ሆነ በተከታታይ ሳይታከም ሲቆይ የመጨረሻ ውሳኔ ራሱን ማጥፋቱ ለራሱም ሆነ ለቤተሰቡ እንዲሁም ለህብረተሰቡ መፍትሄ ነው ብሎ ሲያምን የሚወስደው እርምጃ ነው። አንድ ሰው እዚህ ደረጃ እንዳይደርስ ምን ማድረግ አለበት? አንደኛ ስለ ጭንቅላት ህመም በሽታ እንደማንም ህመም እንደሆነ ለመነጋገር ወይም ለመዋየት ስንችል በሽተኛውም ከራሱ ላይ ምንም አይነት ተጽዕኖ ስለማያደርስበት በጊዜው አስፈላጊውን ሕክምና ማግኘት ሲችል ነው። ሁለተኛው የህብረተሰቡን ተሳትፎ ስለ ህመሙ በማወቅ ለበሽተኛው ደጋፊና አበረታች በመሆን ህመምተኛውን በጊዜው ሕክምና እንዲያገኝ ሲያደርግ ነው። በተጨማሪም ስለ ህመሙ ለማያውቁ በማስተማር የአእምሮ መታወክ እንደማንኛውም ህመም ሕክምና እንዲቆጥረውና በጊዜው እርዳታ የሚያስፈልገው ሰው ካለ እርዳታውን እንዲያገኝ ማስተማር ነው። አንዳንድ የአእምሮ መታወክ ህመም ዕውቀት ወዳላለው ሐኪም በመሄድ የሚያስፈልገው መድኃኒት ማግኘት ይገባዋል። ማለትም አሁን አንድ ሰው የስኳር በሽታ ቢይዘው በኤክሰርሳይዝ ብቻ አይድንም። ማለትም መድኃኒት መውሰድ አለበት። ወይም ኒሞኒያ ቢይዘው በረፍት ብቻ አይድንም፣ አንቲባዮቲክ መውሰድ ያስፈልገዋል። እንደዚሁም የአእምሮ ችግር ያለበት ሁሉ አንድ ጊዜ በመነጋገርና በመዋየት ብቻ ሊፈታ ላይችል ይችላል። ማለትም መድኃኒት መውሰድ ሊያስፈልገው ይችላል። በዚህ አጋጣሚ ልገልጸው የምፈልገው ከባድ የሆነ የመንፈስ መናወጥ ሰው ላይ ካያችሁ የእኛ ድርጅት አስፈላጊውን እርዳታ ስላዘጋጀ በስልክ ቁጥር 800-854-7771 800-854-7771 ብትደውሉ ድንገተኛ ለሆኑ ችግሮች አገልግሎት ስለምንሰጥ ሁላችሁም ቁጥሩን በማስታወሻችሁ ብትይዙት ይገባል ሲሉ ገለጡ።
The third question I want to ask you, what can you tell us about the department's effort on mental illness prevention program, especially to address the small immigrant communities like Ethiopians?
ሶስተኛው ጥያቄ የእርስዎ መስሪያ ቤት የአእምሮ ህውከትን ለመከላከል ምን አይነት እርምጃዎችና ስራዎችን እየሰራ ነው?
For prevention, there's really two approaches that we're trying to develop for immigrant communities, but for people in general. And I alluded to one of those already, which is we need to find ways to strengthen communities. Insofar as we can build up communities so that people can support each other, that's the best prevention activity that there is. If we can strengthen families so that parents can talk with children, that when the stresses that happen because of what happens in American schools that is different from what one would expect to have happened at school back home, those pressures are on kids that the parents really don't know about. We have programs that try to teach children and parents how to talk to one another about issues, particularly when issues come up in school. We have programs in the schools for that. That's a wonderful prevention kind of activity. Another kind of prevention activity we have is we're trying to have people understand their mental health in the context of their physical health. So we're trying to teach primary care doctors how to recognize mental health issues, and how to say, you know, that kind of sadness, that kind of anxiety that you have, maybe is something that you should talk to somebody about. Here's the number for the mental health department, and go then. So we're trying to prevent mental illness by intervening early with doctors who treat the physical illness. That's another kind of approach. But this is the biggest approach. The biggest prevention approach is the one, Mr. Darris, that we're undertaking right now. Education. We need to educate the public so that they know that mental illness is a part of the general human condition. There's no shame attached to it. It's just a part of being a human being. Every family, whether they admit it or not, is touched by mental illness. And so, if that's the case, then there ought to be no obstacle to getting the help that you need. So, reducing the issues of shame and educating the public about stresses that cause mental illness, I think, is the number one, most important, and biggest prevention activity that we can undertake.
አንደኛው ስራ ከዚህ በፊት እንደተናገርኩት አንዱን ህብረተሰብ በማጠናከርና የአእምሮ ጭንቀት የሚያመጣውን ሁሉ ከህብረተሰቡ ጋር በትምህርትም ሆነ በስራ ለመፍታት ስንሞክር ነው። ሁለተኛው በልጆችና በቤተሰብ መካከል የመነጋገርና የመደማመጥ ስርዓት በመፍጠር ምንም አይነት ችግር በወጣቱ ትውልድ ትምህርት ቤት በሚያጋጥመው የመንፈስ ጭንቀት እንዳይፈጠርበት ለማድረግ ትምህርትና ምክር በመስጠት ነው። ሶስተኛው ህብረተሰብን ለማስተማር እየሞከርን ያለው አንድ ሰው ስለ ጤንነት ሲናገር የአእምሮን ጤንነት ከመላ ሰውነቱ ጤንነት ጋር ማሰብ እንዳለበት በማስተማር ለምሳሌም ያህል በሕክምና ዓለም ውስጥ ያሉ ሐኪሞች ሰው በየዓመቱ ለሚያደርገው የጤና ምርመራ ላይ የመንፈስ መረበሽ ወይም ጭንቀት ካዩ ሰውየውን በመምከር ከኛ መስሪያ ቤት ጋር እንዲያገናኙ ስልክ ቁጥር በመስጠት አስፈላጊውን እርምጃ እንዲወስድ ማድረግ ይገባዋል። ከሁሉም በበለጠ የአእምሮን በሽታ ለመከላከል በጣም ይጠቅማል ብዬ ልገልጽ የምፈልገው ይሄውና አሁን አንተና እኔ አብረን እያደረግነው ያለነው በውይይት ህብረተሰቡን እንዲያውቅ በማድረግ ማስተማር ነው። ይህም የአእምሮ በሽታ ከአዳምና ከሔዋን የተፈጠረ ሰው ሁሉ እንደማናቸውም ህመም በተለያየ ጊዜ በተለያየ ሰው ሊከሰት የሚችል ስለሆነ የሁላችንም ይህን መገንዘብ ለታመመው አበረታችና ደጋፊ በመሆን መርዳት ስንችል ነው። እንዲህም ስንል ለበሽታው መነጋገር ብቻ ሳይሆን የመንፈስ መረበሽ ከአንድ ሰው ላይ ከታየ ወደ አዋቂዎች ሆዶ መድኃኒትም ሆነ ሌላ እርዳታ እንዲያገኝ ማድረግ ስንችል ነው። አድማጮቻችን ከሙዚቃና ከማስተዋቂያ በኋላ ከዶክተር ሳዘርድ ጋር ያደረግነው ውይይት እንቀጥላለን።
ተደሰቺ በይንዳይ ከፋሺ ከታውጪ ያምርብሻል ፈገግታሺ ሳቂልኝ እስቲ እባክሽ ያገሬ ልጅ ተደሰቺ በይንዳይ ከፋሺ ከታውጪ ያምርብሻል ፈገግታሺ ሳቂልኝ እስቲ እባክሽ ሳቂልኝ ሐሳቢ ይቅርብቺ ተታውጪ ዛሬ ነው ደስታሺ ይግራፊትሽ ልክ እንደ ፀሐይ እረካለሁ ፈገግታሽን ሳይ ሳቂልኝ ሐሳቢ ይቅርብቺ ተታውጪ ዛሬ ነው ደስታሺ ይግራፊትሽ ልክ እንደ ፀሐይ እረካለሁ ፈገግታሽን ሳይ ቤላ ቤላዬ ቤላ ከረሜላዬ
ማስታወቂያ በኢሳክ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅት ቢሮ ውስጥ በየሳምንቱ በነጻ የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶች የልብስ ስፌትና የእጅ ሙያዎች፣ ዙምባ ኤክሰርሳይዝ፣ ሲፒአር፣ ኮምፒውተር፣ የእንግሊዝኛ ቋንቋ፣ በእነዚህ ትምህርቶች ውስጥ ለመሳተፍ የምትፈልጉ ሁሉ እንዲሁም ማንኛውም እርዳታ ለምትሹ በቢሮአችን አድራሻ አይዛክ ደረስ ፋውንዴሽን 6820 ላቴራ ቦulevard ስዊት 100 ሎስ አንጀለስ ካሊፎርኒያ 90045 በመምጣት ልትገለገሉ ትችላላችሁ። በተጨማሪም በድረገጻችን isaacdaresfoundation.org በመግባት ድርጅቱ የሚሰጠውን አገልግሎቶች ሙሉ በሙሉ ልትረዱ ትችላላችሁ።
ደስታ ከተፋ ከውፍትሺ ይገባል ልቤ የሚያፈቅርሺ 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 ሰጪ በይንዳይ ከፋሽ ተታውጪ ያምብሻል ፈገግታሽ ሳቂ ሚስቲ እባክሽ ያገሬ ልጅ ተደሰጪ በይንዳይ ከፋሽ ተታውጪ ያምብሻል ፈገግታሽ ሳቂ ሚስቲ እባክሽ የምተን ይገባል የመጪውን ካለሱ ማን ያውቃል ምን ባደላል የዛሬዋ ቀን ደስታን ይዘሽ ጠብቂያት ነገር ሁሉም ያፋል የምተን ይገባል።
አድማጮቻችን ስለ ይስሐቅ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅትም ሆነ ማንኛውም ጥያቄ ካላችሁ በስልክ ቁጥር 323 868 3299 ይደውሉ። ድርጅቱ የሚሰጣቸው አገልግሎቶች በጠቅላላ ያለምንም ክፍያ በነፃ እንደሆነ ለህብረተሰባችን እናስታውቃለን።
የመጪውን ካለሱ ማን ያውቃል ምን ባደላል የዛሬዋ ቀን ደስታን ይዘሽ ጠብቂያት ነገር ቤላ ቤላዬ ቤላ ከረሜላዬ ውበት ቁንጅና ላንቺ አድሎሽ የሚያይሽ ሁሉ ቤላ ያለሽ ደስታ ከተፋ ከውፍትሽ ይገባል ልቤ የሚያፈቅርሽ 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 ቤላ ቤላዬ ከረሜላዬ ውበት ቁንጅና ላንቺ አድሎሽ የሚያይሽ ሁሉ ቤላ ያለሽ ደስታ ከተፋ ከውፍትሽ ይገባል ልቤ የሚያፈቅርሽ የሚያፈቅርሽ የሚያፈቅርሽ
አድማጮቻችን ከዶክተር ሳዘር ጋር የምናደርገው ውይይት እዚህ ላይ ይቀጥላል።
The fourth question I have for you is what changes will the healthcare reform bring to that will affect the underrepresented community?
አራተኛው ጥያቄ አዲሱ የጤና ሕክምና ሕግ ንዑስ ለሆኑ አዲስ መጭ ህብረተሰብ ምን አይነት ለውጥ ያመጣል?
So healthcare reform, I think, presents some wonderful opportunities, but it leaves some things unresolved. So particularly for immigrant communities. So the wonderful opportunities that are associated with health reform are that if you qualify for health reform either under Medicaid or under the California covered, which is the your ability to get subsidized insurance coverage, those, both the Medicaid expansion, as it's called, the expanded availability of Medi-Cal, and the covered California, the ability to buy an insurance policy at a reduced rate, those things will give very many people the opportunity to get easy access to mental health care, number one. And number two, it ought to give that access to mental health care in such a way that it's coordinated with the physical health care. Because right now, one of the biggest problems for somebody who's getting mental health care and also has a physical health problem is they're seen in separate systems. So sometimes it can happen that your physical health doctor is giving you prescriptions for things that may actually make your mental health problems worse. But if the physical health care doctor doesn't know about your mental health care issues and vice versa, then you may have things going on that are working against one another. Health reform requires a coordination between the mental health provider and the physical health care provider that ought to yield better care, better results of the care, and cheaper care. All really good things. For immigrant communities, the problem is that many in immigrant communities will not qualify for health reform and will therefore still need to rely on the care systems that currently exist. Now, for mental health in Los Angeles County, that's not a problem because our intention is to provide the same level of and intensity of mental health care for people who remain uninsured as for those who get the new insurance. So there won't be less care for uninsured populations. However, there won't, on the physical health side, necessarily be more access than there is right now. And as anyone knows, getting access to physical health care, if you don't have insurance, can be challenging. You end up many times in emergency rooms or long waiting lines when you would prefer to be able to walk in and see your primary care doctor. So that is a problem that will at least initially remain. But the overall goal here in Los Angeles, and it's not the goal in other places, but the goal in Los Angeles is to have the same level of mental health care and the same level of physical health care for uninsured communities after health reform as now. So that's our intention, and we'll see what we're actually able to accomplish.
አዲሱ የአሜሪካን ሕክምና ሕግ በሜዲካል ወይም በካሊፎርኒያ የሚሸፈነው ኢንሹራንስ ውስጥ ላለው ሁሉ ብዙ ጥቅም ያለው ሲሆን በሌላ በኩል ደግሞ በአንዳንድ ጉዳይ ላይ ሁሉም አያሟላም። ይህንም ስል ኢንሹራንስ ውስጥ ላሉት ሰዎች ማንኛውም ሕክምና የሚገናኝበትን መስመር በሕጉ ስለተዘረጋ አንድ ሐኪም የሚሰጠው መድኃኒት የሌላውን በሽታ እንዳያብሰው ይረዳል። ለምሳሌም ያህል የአእምሮ በሽታ መድኃኒት ከሌላው ሰውነት ሕክምና መድኃኒት ጋር እንዳይጋጭ ያደርጋል ማለት ነው። ሌላው ደግሞ አስፈላጊውን ሐኪም በፈለገበት ጊዜ ለማየት ይችላል። በተጨማሪም ሌላ ወጪ አይኖርበትም። ይህ ኢንሹራንስ ለሌለው ግን የአእምሮ ነክ ለሆነው ሕክምና ሁሉ በሎስ አንጀለስ ውስጥ ምንም አይነት ለውጥ የለውም። ኢንሹራንስ ቢኖረውም ባይኖረውም ሕክምናውን ያገኛል። የሌላውን ሰውነት ሕክምና ለማግኘት ኢንሹራንስ የሌለው የፈለገውን ሐኪም እንደፈለገ ማየት ስለማይችል ያው በድንገተኛ ክፍል በመሄድ ነው ሊታከም የሚችለው።
The first question I want to ask you is, what can the Ethiopian community do to serve its own community in regards to mental health?
አምስተኛው ጥያቄ የኢትዮጵያን ህብረተሰብ በአእምሮ ህመም በኩል የራሱን ህብረተሰብ ለመርዳት በምን አይነት ይችላል?
I think the Ethiopian community, I would like to see the Ethiopian community focus on three things. The first of those three things is for the Ethiopian community to look at those things that cause stress and trauma in your community. Maybe that has to do with immigration. Maybe that has to do with lack of work. Maybe that has to do with family ties that have been broken in the process of the immigration, of moving here. Because one of the things that we've learned is that trauma that is not dealt with ultimately leads to mental health problems and issues and erodes a family's ability to care for one another. So I think the first thing the community can do is help identify those things, those sources of trauma that most affect you, and let us in the mental health department know what those things are so that we can develop ways of intervening early with the trauma. Because that's one of the things that we have learned in the mental health world, is that the earlier we are able to approach issues regarding trauma, the better the outcome will be. So that's number one. The second thing is to maybe do a community examination of conscience and say, are we unintentionally keeping people from getting the care they need because of our attitudes about mental illness? Do we say things about people with mental illness that would make them feel ashamed and therefore not able to get the help they need, and therefore a bad outcome, even a suicide might occur? So I think when suicides, when tragedies occur in our communities, it really is an opportunity for change, to take a look and to see if there are things we might change in our attitudes, in our community, that could make our communities healthier and strong. The third thing that I would ask the Ethiopian community to do is to have the leadership come together and reach out and say, how do we make our families stronger? Because in the long run, that will make our communities strong. And it's not, clearly not just mental health treatment. Having a strong family, mental health treatment is a small part. But there are lots of things that any healthy community would want to do to strengthen its families. And so to try to have the leadership think, how do we go about this process of making our families stronger and more functional, recognizing that the environment that they live in is different from the environment back home?
የኢትዮጵያን ህብረተሰብ ሶስት ነገሮችን ትኩረት በመስጠት እንዲመለከት እፈልጋለሁ ካሉ በኋላ አንደኛው በህብረተሰብ ውስጥ የመንፈስ ጭንቀትን ሊያመጡ የሚችሉትን ነገሮች ለይቶ ማወቅ እንዲሁም የችግሩም መነሻዎች ምክንያቶችን በመመርመር ለመቋቋም የሚያበቃን መንገድ ወይንም አስፈላጊውን እርምጃዎች የሚወሰድበትን መፍትሄዎች ለማምጣት እንዲችል ነው። ለምሳሌም ያህል የችግሩ መነሻዎች ስራ ማጣት፣ የመኖሪያ ፈቃድ አለመኖር፣ አለኝታ ማጣት ወይም የሀገርና የዘመድ መናፈቅ ይመሳሰሉ ሊሆኑ ይችላሉ። ሁለተኛው ደግሞ በጠቅላላ ህብረተሰቡ ራሱን በመገምገም ተጽዕኖ ይሆናል ብሎ ያለውን ለይቶ እንዲያውቀው ያስፈልጋል። ይህንም ስል ምናልባት ሳናውቀው በመንሰራውም ሆነ በመንነጋገረው ቃል የአእምሮ ህመምን በተመለከተ ሰውን የሚነካ ወይም የሚያንቋሽሽ በሽተኛው ከጭንቅላት ህክምና እንዲርቅ የሚያደርግ ስራ ትችትም ሆነ ንግግር እንጠቀማለን ወይ ብሎ መጠየቅ ያስፈልጋል። ሶስተኛው በህብረተሰቡ ውስጥ ያሉት ተቀባይነት ያላቸው መሪ የሆኑ ሰዎች ሁሉ የህብረተሰቡን በተለያየ መንገድ መዳበሩን፣ መበልጸጉን፣ መማሩን ሊያበረታቱና ሊያስተምሩ ይገባቸዋል። ይህም ብቻ ሳይሆን እያንዳንዱ ቤተሰብ የሚጠናከርበትን መንገድ ማሰብ የህብረተሰቡ መጠናከር መሰረት ነው ብዬ አምናለሁ ሲሉ ገልጸዋል።
Now the sixth question I have is there anything that you want to tell us that we forgot to ask you?
የመጨረሻ ጥያቄ በርሶ በኩል ያልጠየቅነው ነገር ሊናገሩት የሚፈልጉት አለ ወይ?
Well, one of the things that I had wanted to share with you and also to talk about is the gifts that immigrant communities have brought to Los Angeles. And so one of the things that has been really good for me is that as we've done outreach to the immigrant communities of all different kinds, one of the things that we've learned is that many of the immigrant communities have a very strong commitment to the spiritual lives and the spiritual development of their communities. And I think that attention to the spiritual dimension of human existence and human lives is one of the things that immigrant groups have brought to Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, and that we're trying to incorporate in our work. So we have put together over the last few years ways of thinking about how we incorporate attention to the spiritual needs of our mental health clients into our mental health treatment, and we've developed with our clinical staff some parameters to make sure that nobody is trying to proselytize or have people change what their religious commitments are, but find ways to support so that people can use their spiritual experience as a tool for their personal healing and growth. And I guess that's the last thing I want to say, is that I think that kind of insight is something that immigrant communities have brought to larger Los Angeles, and I wanted to thank you for that.
በሎስ አንጀለስ ከተማችን ውስጥ በጣም ደስ የሚለኝ ከተለያዩ አገር የመጣችሁ ህብረተሰቦች የከተማችን ትልቅ ውበታችን ናችሁ። በተለይም በአሁኑ ሰዓት ሃይማኖትም በተመለከተ ከአእምሮ ህክምና ጋራ በጥምር በየእምነታቸው የሰውነትን ህክምና ብቻ እንዳይሆን የመንፈሳዊ ህክምናም አብረው እንደሚፈልጉት እንዲሰጣቸው በማድረግ ሙሉ በሙሉ የመፈወስ ሁኔታዎች እየፈጠርን ባለንበት ሰዓት በዚህም ላይ በአእምሮ ህክምና ላሉት ኢትዮጵያውያን እናንተም እንደ እምነታቸው ከኛ ጋር አብራችሁ በመስራት የመንፈሳዊ መረጋጋትን ሆነ ህክምና በመስጠት እንድትተባበሩ አሳስባለሁ ብለው ውይይታቸውን ጨርሰዋል።
Dr. Sadat, I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you on behalf of the Ethiopian community and Isaac Deres Foundation for making yourself available for this interview. It shows you care deeply. Therefore, I want to express my sincere appreciation and thanks to you. Thank you, sir.
በኢሳክ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅትና በኢትዮጵያውያን ስም ለሰጡን ማብራሪያና ገለጻ ከልብ አመሰግናለሁኝ። እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልን።
Thanks. I want to give you my thanks for the opportunity to share this message.
Thank you.
እኔም ህብረተሰቡ እንዳናገር ስለጋበዝከኝ ይህን እድል ስለሰጠኝ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ።
ተሽበክፉከን እንድባባሽ ፈልጌ ሰው ቢያስተዋውቅን አሳፈርሽኝ መውደዴ ልነግርሽ ብሞክር ምን ጨካኝ ነሽ ማትራሪ የማይገባሽ ፍቅር
ማስታወቂያ በኢሳክ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅት ቢሮ ውስጥ በየሳምንቱ በነጻ የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶች የልብስ ስፌትና የእጅ ሙያዎች፣ ዙምባ ኤክሰርሳይዝ፣ CPR፣ ኮምፒውተር፣ የእንግሊዝኛ ቋንቋ፣ በእነዚህ ትምህርቶች ውስጥ ለመሳተፍ የምትፈልጉ ሁሉ እንዲሁም ማንኛውንም እርዳታ ለምትሹ በቢሮአችን አድራሻ አይዛክ ድረስ ፋውንዴሽን 6820 ላቴራ ቦulevard ስዊት 100 ሎስ አንጀለስ ካሊፎርኒያ 90045 በመምጣት ልትገለገሉ ትችላላችሁ። በተጨማሪም በድረገጻችን isaacdresfoundation.org በመግባት ድርጅቱ የሚሰጠውን አገልግሎቶች ሙሉ በሙሉ ልትረዱ ትችላላችሁ።
ፍቅሬን መግለጼ ምን ክፋት አለው? ሰይፊታትሽ ባክሻታለው ሰይፊታትሽ ያፍራለው አረተይ ሰይፊታትሽ ያፍራለው ሰይፊታትሽ ያፍራለው አረተይ ሰይፊታትሽ ያፍራለው እንኳንስ ፊትነስተሽ ባሽ ፈልጌ ሰው ቢያስተዋውቀን አሳፈርሽኝ የመውደዴ ልነግርሽ ብሞክር ምን ጨካኝ ነሽ ማፍራሪ የማይገባሽ ፍቅር
አድማጮቻችን ስለ ይስሐቅ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅትም ሆነ ማንኛውም ጥያቄ ካላችሁ በስልክ ቁጥር 323 868 3299 ይደውሉ። ድርጅቱ የሚሰጣቸው አገልግሎቶች በጠቅላላ ያለምንም ክፍያ በነፃ እንደሆነ ለህብረተሰባችን እናስታውቃለን።
Drum my
ማስታወቂያ በኢሳክ ድረስ የበጎ አድራጎት ድርጅት ቢሮ ውስጥ በየሳምንቱ በነጻ የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶች የልብስ ስፌትና የእጅ ሙያዎች፣ ዙምባ ኤክሰርሳይዝ፣ ሲፒአር፣ ኮምፒውተር፣ የእንግሊዝኛ ቋንቋ። በእነዚህ ትምህርቶች ውስጥ ለመሳተፍ የምትፈልጉ ሁሉ እንዲሁም ማንኛውንም እርዳታ ለምትሹ በቢሮአችን አድራሻ የኢሳክ ድረስ ፋውንዴሽን